Good morning. As we know, Jesus was speaking, and it's recorded in Matthew 24, about the end of the world. But he was also talking about the end of Jerusalem. And in verse 21, he says, "For then there will be great tribulation or affliction, such as has not been from the beginning of the world until now, no, and never will be again." So was he talking about the end of Jerusalem or the end of the world? In order to try to understand this, we might go to Luke 21, and we'll talk about the end of Jerusalem. It was going to be a dreadful time. Halfway through verse 23 of Luke 21, he said, "For great misery and anguish and distress shall be upon the nation at that time." Verse 24, "They will fall by the mouth, by the edge of the sword, be led away as captives to and among all the nations." Now, because it was going to be such a difficult, dreadful time, Jesus said to the Christians in verse 20, "When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know and understand that Jerusalem's desolation has come near. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Those who are inside the city get out of it." Now, we know this happened in the year 66. Jerusalem was surrounded by the Romans. For some reason they disappeared. And that gave, obviously, the Jewish Christians a chance to get out of it. Now, I have a map here, if I can find it. And here we are, Jerusalem, surrounded by, I'm messing up the light, surrounded by armies. They fled to Pella, which is up in the mountains. And it was about 70 miles away across the Jordan, a reasonably safe place for them to go. So they didn't suffer when Jerusalem fell in dire circumstances. Why was Jerusalem to suffer so badly? Well, Jesus explains in verse 22 of Luke 21, "Those are days of vengeance, of rendering full justice, that all the things that are written may be fulfilled." Well, what things? Jesus explained in Matthew 23 and verse 35, "That upon your heads may come all the blood of the righteous," all the blood that had been spilled by the Jews, by persecution, by those Christians who were persecuted after the time of Jesus. That the justice for that was going to come upon Jerusalem. Jesus mentioned the Abel up to the time of Zechariah, who was murdered between the sanctuary and the altar. It was a judgment from God, and it was dire. Josephus, if we believe him, explained that over 1 million people died, either from famine or from when the Romans eventually got into the city. They killed nearly everybody, took the rest captive. It was atrocious. There were so many people in Jerusalem because they'd come in for the Passover. There were those factions inside the city who were warring against each other. So the city in the year 70 was surrounded by Romans, but there was trouble inside the city as well. It was a dire time. Now, so was Jesus, when he said that this tribulation would be as worst one ever, was he talking about the end of Jerusalem? I believe he was, because if we go down to verse 29 of Matthew 24, he said, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not shed its light," etc. And shortly after the end of Jerusalem, we did indeed enter a time of great darkness. Literacy became virtually nil. You couldn't read the Bible because it was either in Latin or Greek. There was a great time of spiritual darkness. Christianity was surrounded by weeds. And it wasn't until more modern times that the light began to penetrate that darkness. Now, if the end of Jerusalem was the worst thing ever, we have a problem. Because in Daniel chapter 12 and in Revelation 7, it talks about a time of great tribulation. Revelation 7 talks about those who come out or through the great tribulation. So how are we to understand this? Well, I'm not absolutely certain. Maybe it won't be as bad as the end of Jerusalem, because it says that we will come through this tribulation. How? Well, it says that we have washed our robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Our faith in God will get us through it. Now, the end of Jerusalem was a time of judgment, like Sodom and Gomorrah, the Jews being deported to Babylon, and it was the worst ever judgment from God. Maybe this time won't be so bad. It's going to be difficult. Now, this tribulation that we're going through at the moment is man-made. The First and Second World Wars were man-made. We're going through climate change. We are going to lose our houses, either through flood, fire, drought, other problems, where our house might be blown down by a gale, a hurricane, tornado. We're going through these difficult times. We can pray for help that it won't be too bad. And it's possible that it won't be as bad as the end of Jerusalem. Who knows? Maybe we need to go through this time to find out. But anyway, I'm sure there are lots of ideas on this, and I don't want to be dogmatic about it. The important thing is we're going to face a time of trouble. Don't despair. Faith will get us through it. And if we have any views on what Jesus said about the Great Tribulation, by all means put it in the comments and we can discuss it amongst ourselves. The most important thing, as I said, was our faith in God will get us through this time of trouble. And a new world is going to come. The kingdom is going to put everything right. Don't despair if you lose everything, your house, your possessions. A better world is coming, and we look forward to that. So I'll leave you in God's great care, knowing that you'll be safe whatever happens. God bless you all.